I'm sure everybody here has watched at least one movie in their life. Some people like to say that they have a favorite movie. I hate that term. My entire life I've been watching many various movies, but I can never name one as my favorite. In the end of the day, I just love movies. I like to see the history of Bali almost as a movie script. There are important plot points and protagonists that directly influence the history of tourism in Bali. For example, the artists Walter Spies and Miguel Covarrubias helped shape the idea, the magical island in the Indian Ocean, with their beautiful paintings. In the start, the tourism industry was a very small industry. Blows during dramatic moments like the Japanese occupation in the Second World War, the political turmoil, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Going back to the idea that Bali is almost a movie script, and that has plot points and protagonists, I'd say that the biggest protagonist in the history of tourism in Bali is the first president of Indonesia, Sukarno. He built the first five-star hotel in Sanur, the Bali Beach Hotel, and the Ngurah Airport, which we use to this day. He was incredibly influential for the development of tourism. Now that we've talked a little bit about the history of tourism in Bali, let's go on to talk a little bit about the problems. Did you know that according to ESVC, more than 80% of economic income in Bali comes from tourism? And that, as one of my friends, Olivia, has already talked about, one tourist produces 3.5 times more waste than a local. But what impressed me the most in my research phase was that in 2017, 6,070,473 tourists came into Bali. That's more than its own population. Some of the problems that I've talked about are noticeable, like the pollution that covers our beaches and many other places in Bali, or the traffic jams that we always have to face after we leave our houses. But some of them are less noticeable. For example, did you know that for the last 25 years, 1% every year of agricultural land in Bali has been lost for the last 25 years? And the overdevelopment of tourism not only affects the agricultural land. There's a water crisis that's happening in Bali. This water crisis is just as important as pollution and as traffic jams, in my opinion. But I didn't even know it existed before I started researching about it. Since the very first time I started thinking about Quest, I had no hesitation on doing something related to filmmaking. As I have already mentioned, I'm very passionate about filmings. But I also relate to tourism. In fact, my first plane ride was before my first month in the world. Since then, I've been a tourist in many different places in the world. It has not been long since I realized how damaging this industry can be. I mean, I always hear people talking about politics, global warming, and economics, but I never heard anybody talking about how sustainable tourism is important. That not only is its own problem, but it also affects all these last three problems I have just talked about. In the starting stages of Quest, I decided to focus my attention into learning more about documentaries and filmmakers. I had the opportunity to discover that documentaries can come in many different ways, shapes, and forms. And I also had the opportunity to discover many amazing filmmakers, such as Errol Morris, Michael Moore, Ken Burns, and my personal favorite, Werner Herzog. So I had the idea to make a documentary myself. I just didn't expect it to be as hard as it actually was. I made some funny productions with some of my friends, and they were quite simple and fun. After I started the process of doing the documentary, I realized that it was going to be a lot harder than these funny productions I made with my friends. I had to learn about pre-production, production, post-production, distribution, camera setup, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, camera angles, wide shots, medium shots, close-ups, inserts, low angle, Dutch angle, camera moves, pans, tilts, tracking shots, dolly shots, reverse dolly shots, lighting, key light, fill light, backlight, soft light. I had to learn how to conduct an interview. I had to learn how to work on sound design, and all that I've just said are just technical stuff. There are many other things I also had to learn outside of this. Then, after I had an idea about documentaries, filmmakers, and more of the technical side, I wanted to set some targets on my documentary. As I have already learned a lot about documentaries, I knew that doing a documentary was one of the best ways to raise awareness about things. So that was the main target for my documentary in the first place. I wanted to raise awareness about this problem. Then I thought about how long my movie should be. In the start, I was determined to make a movie that would be 10 to 15 minutes long. But as time went by and I realized how much time I had, I chose to lower the time target to 7 to 10 minutes. Then we have the three main phases of making a documentary. There's a pre-production, the production, and the post-production. On the pre-production, you start thinking about what I wanted to show and what I wanted to film. This consists of making interview lists, questionnaires, shot lists, and most importantly, your script. Then you have your production. That, for me, is the best part. I love being out there with my camera or conducting an interview. I love having the power to start or to stop filming something. For me, it's almost a state of mind. Then we have the post-production. That's just a fancy way of saying editing. My dad and many other people liked saying that editing was when your movie started coming alive. The funnest part, the part where you would be more relaxed. That wasn't even close to the truth. That was the hardest part for me. I found myself struggling to get my editing time to be compatible with the time of Quest. But I didn't think it was possible. I thought about stopping the process of making the documentary to just stick to making a little trailer so I would have something to show to you guys today. But then my mom sat me down and talked to me. She told me that I would never feel good about myself if I only did that. If I only settled to make the trailer, I would not feel good about myself on the Quest day. I would feel unsatisfied. So I decided I would focus on doing the documentary. And after sweat, blood, and tears, the documentary was complete. Unfortunately, I did not have enough time to show the full documentary here, as the time limit does not allow me to show the full 10-minute documentary. But here is a short trailer that I worked on. It's here. Yeah.
When suicide bombers detonated.
It was like an epiphany, because Bali, was such an extraordinary place.
Always is very important. Before we go, we to start the walk in the morning, afternoon. Always we take like this, and then finish we go to work.
They have a lot of challenges around how they manage their waste. Pollution is quite a problem. There's a water crisis in Bali that not many people talk about.
The Bukit area has very, very little water.
I won't sit here and lie and say that the whole quest experience has been wonderful. It's had its ups and downs. Sometimes I felt like I wouldn't be able to finish it. Sometimes I felt like I would finish it 2 weeks before it would be before the deadline. I have to read so many matters in the island of Bali. But one thing that I'm happy I realized, that I didn't realize in the starting stages of Quest, is that most of all, and most importantly of all, at least to me, is that this is a learning experience. I can look back to this project and be proud about the movie that I made, but I can also look back and be happy about how much stuff I learned. Now, I would like to go on and to thank people. First of all, I'd like to thank myself for never giving up, even though it was hard at some points. I'd like to thank my teachers, Pakdan, Ibulora, and Ibuanji, for always giving me a solution in my problems. I'd like to thank my mentors, Pak Mads, Pak Mikhail, and Pak Widi, for helping me with the more technical side, with the speeches, with the slides, and with my editing phase. No, my biggest editor, Ferdinand. He's not here today, but we sat in the room for 24 hours at least, working on the editing. So I would like to thank him. I'd like to thank my dad for being with me and helping me in every phase of my project. I'd like to thank my mom for not letting me give up and stick with the mediocrity, and always giving me the best advice for my project. And I'd like to thank my friends who are always there for me. But most of all, I'd like to thank Mark for not letting me give up on my career as a filmmaker and pushing me to start a new project with him. Thank you very much.